North Korea's foreign ministry said the U.S. will experience the greatest pain and suffering in its history if the sanctions go through as the UNSC prepares for a vote on the resolution.
In anticipation of the UN vote, North Korea's state-run news agency went on the offensive, accusing the US of manipulating the Security Council to unjustly penalize the regime. It warned that if Washington does push through its, quote, illegal and unlawful sanctions, Pyongyang would make sure the US pays its due price.
The U.S. drafted resolution calling for new sanctions on North Korea is expected to be put up for a vote at the UN Security Council. However, the measures are reportedly much softer than the version Washington originally intended. Kwon Jang-ho explains further.
A UN Security Council vote for new sanctions on North Korea is set to go ahead on Monday, but not as originally intended by the US. News agencies Reuters and AFP have seen the latest draft of the resolution, and it seems after 4 days of negotiations, several measures have been watered down in an effort to appease China and Russia, who had expressed opposition to increasing sanctions. The financial and travel ban on Kim Jong-un that was in the original draft is now gone, and an oil and gas embargo has also been softened to be introduced progressively. Wording on the measures concerning North Korean workers overseas and the inspection of ships suspected of carrying prohibited cargo has also been amended. However, a full ban on the exports of textiles is set to remain in place. With these changes, the vote is expected to pass unanimously. This will further strengthen sanctions that are already considered the strongest ever in an attempt to squeeze the regime's resources and slow down its rapidly progressing nuclear weapons program. Much attention will turn to how stringently China implements the measures, as Beijing continues to emphasize the need for talks rather than sanctions or military action.
Seoul's Unification Ministry pointed out, while the Hermit Kingdom did not conduct another nuclear test over the weekend as many analysts anticipated, speeches given at a key anniversary Saturday hint the communist state is still very much determined to keep pursuing its nuclear weapons program. The head of the U.S. Senate Armed Services Committee suggested a review of deploying tactical nuclear weapons to the peninsula. Kim Hyun-bin has an analysis of the options that's also being debated by lawmakers and ordinary citizens here in South Korea in the wake of Pyongyang's growing nuclear and missile threats.
In an interview broadcast on CNN on Sunday, Senator McCain said Washington needs to seriously review the redeployment of tactical nuclear weapons on the peninsula, just as Seoul's defense chief suggested last week. Defense Minister Song Yong-moo told the South Korean parliament a few days ago that Seoul should consider tactical nuclear armament as a means to deter and react to North Korea's threats effectively. Calls for South Korea to equip itself with nukes.
Know what the possibility is that what could happen, but you hope for peace, plan for war. That's the way that you need to take it on every day when you're going into work.
The needs of the Air Force are pretty great as far as missiles go. It is the Tier 1 function that we provide. It allows everyone else the ability to operate because we do have that constant deterrence going on. So everything is allowed to function because of our strong nuclear presence.
Nuclear deterrence is the bedrock of our national sovereignty. As long as we're in possession of these weapons and we are able to cause such irreparable damage to a potential adversary, they will have to consider their choices carefully moving forward if someone was to decide to attack the United States.
have been growing, despite Cheong Ade's view that the Korean peninsula should be nuclear-free. McCain also urged Washington to step up its presence around North Korea to make it clear to the regime's leader, Kim Jong-un, that the price of the regime's aggressive actions will be extinction. The Arizona Republican also said China was not doing enough to rein in its ally, adding that the U.S. should use its economic leverage to influence Beijing. He acknowledged that losing trade with China would hurt the U.S., but suggested it was the price Washington is willing to pay to get Beijing to step up its pressure on Pyongyang. China's state-run Global Times reported on Sunday that the latest nuclear test by North Korea has allowed Japan and South Korea to increase their purchases of sophisticated military equipment from Washington. Many Chinese military experts are claiming that an arms race is inevitable, with U.S. using the nuclear test as an excuse to strengthen its military presence and increase arms sales to its allies, adding that China will have no choice but to reciprocate.
Seoul warned Pyongyang the Moon administration will pursue a hardline stance against continued provocations. The comments came from South Korea's Foreign Minister Kang Kyung-hwa when speaking to foreign media for the first time since her inauguration.
North Korea is on a reckless path. The price of its continued provocations in blatant disregard of the peace-loving members of the international community will be instability and economic hardship.
The top diplomat added her country will continue to work toward the peaceful achievement of the international community's common goal of complete, verifiable, and irreversible denuclearization of North Korea under the framework of the combined defense posture and deterrence capabilities of Seoul and Washington.
Some of the equipment is very old, but they have been refurbished quite a few times.
The fact that our weapon system was fielded in the late 1960s and ceased production in 1978 and is still operational is a testament to our maintainers.
The fact that we keep revitalizing how these weapons are used and how they're maintained. Those guys in the maintenance field are working so fast and they've got their stuff so wired tight. It's really something else to see. It's pageantry with how much that they have rehearsed and how well and how efficiently they can work.
North Korean leader Kim Jong-un has conducted more missile launches than either his father or his grandfather. Former U.S. Ambassador to South Korea, Christopher Hill, told VOA via Skype that Kim Jong-un appears to be a belligerent leader.
He does not take any responsibility for the fact that North Korea in September 2005 did agree to abandon all their nuclear programs.
Hill says it is naive to think that North Korea has been working on developing nuclear weapons for the past 50 years for defense purposes.
They have very offensive systems in mind, and I think the nuclear weapons play a role in that. And I think ultimately what they are trying to do is to create a circumstance where they can succeed in getting the U.S. off the Korean Peninsula, and then they think they could actually unify it on their terms.
The U.S. diplomat says the United States has never agreed, nor should it, to negotiate over joint military drills with South Korea, as suggested by China and Russia. In his own talks with North Korean diplomats, he said he explained that North Korea should not worry about being attacked.
All of the scenarios for all of those exercises start with the premise that North Korea has invaded South Korea, not that South Korea has invaded North Korea. So I explained that these exercises are defensive, and I told the North Koreans my only regret is that we didn't have those exercises in the summer of 1950.
With regard to a North Korean missile test, he says the United States should use missile defense only as a last resort.
The North Koreans can get information about our trajectories and how our missiles work. So I think we might want to save that for a moment where we feel that the North Korean missile in question is a direct threat.
Hill says the United States should join forces with China and North Korea's other neighbors to find a diplomatic means to get Pyongyang to stop its nuclear programs. But he says a summit between the U.S. and the Chinese presidents should be well prepared.
And it would not be prepared if Trump arrived and sat down and they just started talking about North Korea. There needs to be a diplomatic mission earlier of the kind that Kissinger performed in China in anticipation of President Nixon's visit.
The former diplomat said the United States Department currently lacks a competent team to work on these important issues, and it is critical to form one as soon as possible. Zlatica Houk, VOA